Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Look, I'll be the first one to admit when I have jumped the gun and said something about somebody that I've been wrong about. I have misjudged them, or I haven't really looked into who that person really is or watched them for an extended period of time. I've just basically made a judgment about the person based on how that person got famous. And who am I talking about? I'm talking about Hayley Welch, the Tuah girl who got famous because she gave BJ advice to millions of people on TikTok. Like, that's the whole premise of the Hawk Tour thing. Which, to be honest with you, I had no idea why in the world that got her famous. And yes, I will admit, I was highly critical of her. I shouldn't really have been so critical of a young girl, but it looks like I'm wrong because the internet has actually made the right person famous by the looks of things. From what I've been seeing of Hayley Welch, who is 22 years old, so she's quite a few years younger than I am, she's quite the personality. I have to admit, she seems like a very humble, genuine individual, although her personality is quite bright, it's quite bubbly, and it's quite infectious, actually. I'm like really enjoying following along with her journey. And I actually think she reminds me a lot of someone that I know or once knew in my past. It's just, I think she's a great girl, and she's actually using her fame for all the right reasons. And the reason why I think she's a great girl is because one of the things that she's using her fame, her notoriety, and her money and promoting is helping out dogs and homeless dogs. I mean, I think that is amazing. Going to shelters and helping all these unfostered dogs get fostered. I think that to me earns a lot of brownie points and a lot of respect, because look, you can do so much with your fame and your money, but you choose to help out the homeless dogs. And my goodness, like, if everyone were to do what she's doing, I think the world would be a much better place. Everyone needs a dog. I kid you not. Everyone needs a dog and should have a dog, because they just make the world a much better place. I've got a dog. I love my dog and couldn't imagine life without my dog. I really can't. So, because Hayley Welch has gotten so famous, I mean, what's the next logical step to keep the fame going? You start a podcast. It seems like every bloody person in the world now has got a podcast. And it's like you got to follow along with it, right? Now, a lot of people have been critical of the podcast, but it is literally the number one podcast in the world right now, aside from Joe Rogan and several others. Like, people froth over this stuff. They're finding that Hayley Welch, the Hawk Tour girl, even though she's famous for literally one thing and one thing only, and everyone's like, well, what is she going to talk about? Seemingly, everyone's talking about that. So it's still somewhat trendy, but more than that, everyone's going, what else are you going to talk about aside from that one moment that got you famous? Well, it turns out that Hayley has got quite the story. And again, I misjudged her. I didn't know her upbringing, didn't know where she came from. And if you haven't seen her new reel about cooking with Granny, you definitely should, because Granny is a hoot too. It's fantastic. It really is fantastic stuff. I'm glad the internet didn't make a mistake this time around. Now, the price of fame, as we know, can be quite wild. And I do hope and I do pray that fame keeps, well, I hope that she's got, seems like she's got great people around her to keep her humble and to keep her grounded, especially her granny. And I hope that fame doesn't ruin that and doesn't ruin her life in the worst possible way. So, ladies and gentlemen, I looked at this article on Vulture, and so let's talk about the Talk Tour podcast. So you listen to the Talk Tour podcast. I personally haven't listened to it, but anyway, Whitney Cummings was on there. That was one of the first guests, and then I think she also spoke to Jake Paul or something like that. Anyway, I want to know who Pookie is. That's just my curiosity. I want to know who this Pookie is, because apparently Hayley has got somebody. It's been on and off relationship. But anyway, love how the nickname's Pookie. Oh, Pookie. Anyway, how do you go about turning a successful pull on the internet slot machine into an actual celebrity engine? Well, Haley's been able to do that. The latest sensation to try it out is Haley Welch, aka Hawk Tour Girl, whose enthusiastic delivery of fairly commonplace blowjob advice, spit on that thing, etc., on TikTok over the summer earned her a level of viral fame that was unsurpassed until Pummel Horse Guy, after rapidly capitalizing on the initial wave of attention with Kitschty's merchandise and paid sport appearances, and also a little bit of gambling in the mix. Welch and her reps have now entered phase 3, a podcast. Natch. Here we go. Understandably titled Talk Tour, the pod debuted earlier this week with comedian Whitney Cummings as its maiden guest. Side note, Cummings seemed to be carving out a curious micro niche, helping new viral figures turn podcasters christen their shows. She also appeared on Anna Delvey's first foil when the fake heiress launched her own eponymous podcast last summer. Eponymous. What a weird name to name a podcast. Anyway, in its debut episode, the 22-year-old Tennessee native spends some time talking about her fame. It's crazy how I said 2 words and now I'm here, isn't it? Yeah, I think it's really crazy. Like, come on. I'm not trying to get famous by any stretch of the imagination, but seriously, it has taken me a long time to get to 70,000 subscribers. And by the way, thank you guys so much. I know that I'm not the best thing in the world to listen to on repeat. I know I can be quite boring sometimes, and I know I'm not the most appealing, but far out. Like, I had to work my absolute ass off to get here. But anyway, not that I'm jealous in any way, shape, or form, but fame, I don't want to be famous. I just do not want to be famous. The price of fame is too much, which can only go so far. And doling out relationship advice, which is already a well-worn segment premise among the chat podcast set, Welch still comes across as a blank slate, someone as early in the celebrity life cycle that her persona requires further definition. For her part, Cummings tries to do some of this work by contrasting Welch's ghetto doll Parton, her words, aesthetic, with what the comedian perceives as a tendency among privileged white women to fixate on genteel sensitivities. Love how we got to throw in the privileged white women bit, because Haley doesn't, her story ain't the story of a white privileged girl. But anyway, stupid journalists that got no idea what the hell they're doing. Anyway, instead, Welch displays a one of the boys penchant for gross out uninhabitedness, which Cummings appreciates and does seem to be a viable avenue to build a persona around. This assessment, Welch nods appreciatively. Chatcast and durable internet fame more generally need a lot of things to be viable, but among them are a hook, consistency, and continuity. That last factor is perhaps the most important. And you don't have to squint to already see the lane for Welch. One of the first post-viral appearances was a Barstool sports show, Talk Tour, came out of a partnership with Better, the sports betting company founded by Jake Paul, and noxious YouTuber turned... Love how these journalists don't like people that side with Trump. Hey, they call them perfectly interesting names. So anyway, in the Hollywood Reporter story, touting her signing with a talent firm and an entertainment lawyer for representation, the latter's statement brought up how she was known to her friends as the female Theo Von. She seems that way. She seems like a very chill, down-to-earth, funny person. I'd love to get to know her. Like, seems like that way, you know? If this post-viral fame gambit works out, it's very possible America might well have found its red state call her daddy. Well, there you go. So, to be honest with you all, I think whether or not you want to listen to the podcast, it's totally up to you, but I'm not like into that sort of podcast stuff with people that don't really know what they're talking about. I'm not saying that Haley doesn't necessarily know everything or what she's talking about, but it's just not for me. It's not my thing. Neither is Call Me Daddy and all the other female related podcasts. It's just not my thing. I prefer to have a male host interviewing female guests. I think you get the most out of that. I'm not saying that female podcasters are terrible. I just prefer not to listen to them. I prefer to have them as an actual guest, not as an interviewer. That's just my prerogative and perspective. Unless you are Megyn Kelly. Megyn Kelly is a different story altogether. But all these other girls, nah, not my thing. Anyway, my friends, that's enough from me. But you guys take care. You be blessed. And I'll see you all in the next video. That last part will probably get me cancelled or in trouble. But who knows? We'll find out.